And this is a presentation on the 2018 budget, which is going to start out with an historical overview. I'm going to lay a little foundation for this, if you don't mind, Mr. Gimmel. As has been reported in the news, and I think we've spoken to several times, the budget for 2018 is going to be very challenged. We had hoped to be able to put levied lid lift on the November ballot with the expectation of being able to get some direction from the voters as to what direction they wanted Spokane County to go, if they wanted us to maintain services or they wanted us to start cutting back services and living within some limited resources that are available to county governments. County governments across the state are fiscally challenged because of a variety of different things that cumulatively have worked to reduce revenues for counties across the state, whether it's been voter-approved initiatives like 695 or 747, or whether it's been through annexations and incorporations, whether it's been through reduction in shared revenues from the state, where the state provides revenues to the county for providing state-mandated services, or, quite frankly, the Growth Management Act that has shifted a lot of retail sales tax generators into municipalities, leaving counties with very little retail centers to be able to take advantage of a robust consumer-driven economy like we've experienced here over the last several years. So Commissioner Kearns and I have committed ourselves to a budget process this year that'll be probably the most transparent budget process that I've been through since my time here at the county. Very similar to what we used to do when I was with the city of Spokane. A series of public hearings, an opportunity to educate the public about county government, county finances, and also what has transpired over the last 20 years that has gotten us to the point where we are now. I've heard out on the street, I know the Commissioner Kearns has as well, how did we get here? And so part of the presentation tonight and next week will be to explain the cumulative impacts of all of the things I mentioned before. And then in September, we'll actually have departments coming down and making presentations on their budgets, budget proposals for 2018. As I mentioned earlier, we were hoping that the voters would have an opportunity to give us direction in November. We ended up pulling that off the ballot because the state in their funding structure for addressing the McCleary decision levied a property tax on all of our taxpayer members here in the county that is probably going to average around 87 cents per thousand of valuation of properties. And while our levied lid lift as proposed would have only been 25 cents per thousand, that compounded with the state. We're concerned about the impact on our taxpayers. So we're going to work to try and get through 18 with an expectation that in the end of 18, more than likely from my standpoint, August of next year, we'll go back out to the voters and put before them the levied lid lift. That's assuming that the legislature doesn't do anything to help counties. It's interesting that 747, the initiative, which put a cap on property taxes of 1% per year, the legislature has maintained that 1% cap that applies to cities and counties, but of course they lifted it so they could solve their own problem. And so we don't know what the state might do next year. We're hoping that they come to recognize that the funding model for county government is broke and it really needs some attention. And this is not unique to Spokane County. This is a problem that's affecting counties across the state. A number of counties have already been to their voters seeking additional financing to maintain their budget structure. Lincoln County, just to the west of us, did so about a year or two ago. Whitman County, to the south of us, has also done so. We have used for capital expenditures for the last 3 years a shift of road bank capacity, not road funds, but road bank capacity to be able to deal with some capital expenses in Spokane County. But we've not used it for operational revenue. And that might be something that we have to visit for a one-time expenditure for 2018. We'll see how the budget process unfolds. I know that a lot of our county employees and our department heads and other electeds are really working hard to try and find ways to where we can reduce our expenses for 2018. And I just want to say thank you so much for your efforts. And one way or the other, and we're going to get through this together. But right now, the hearing process that we're going to be involved in for the next month and a half at least is going to be education, all about transparency. We want to make sure that the voters, the taxpayers, the citizens understand how county government is funded and what we're doing to make sure that we can meet their needs. So with that as a backdrop, Mr. Gimmel.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, public and fellow co-workers that took time out of your busy evening to come and listen to the presentation. I do think that it's very important to not only try our best to educate our taxpayers on what we do and how it's funded, but as you said, Commissioner French, a lot of folks, are asking the question, so what happened? Did this just happen over 6 months? Did this just happen yesterday? It just happened because of the state's solution to McCleary? And the answer is no. This has been creeping up on us for quite some time. So what I'd like to do is go over the Spokane County budget. It'll be pretty general discussion. Talk about some structural issues, go over where our revenues come from for the general fund, and go over some expenditures and then our next steps. I think one of the things I'd like to start with, if I could, is that, Spokane County is a very large business. $685 million was the 2017's budget. If you look up there, you can see that it's made up of a lot of different funds. We've separated the general fund out on the orange pie piece because that's the one that we're going to concentrate on, and that's the one that we have to address. The other funds, it's listed there, a lot of them are enterprise funds. They aren't really affected. They pay as they go, like the golf courses, county road department. But we're going to zero in on that general fund because that's the one that we're dealing with the most. So what is the general fund and what services come out of the general fund? If you notice, the general fund services total just about $172 million. And I think this is significant. If you look over on the right-hand side where it says, and I apologize for not having a pointer. Apparently, we don't have a pointer that shows up on the screen. On the general government, a lot of these are statutorily required. This is general, important government functions. They make up 25% of the general fund. Among those are you can read the assessor, the auditor, the commissioner's office, parks, and the treasurer. I find this very significant because of the fact that 75% of the general fund budget is criminal justice system. And as maybe, I know my coworkers know this, but maybe some of the public, that there's been a lot of effort put in with our friends at the city and the City of the Valley and our other partners to look at the criminal justice system and all parts of that system and try to figure out ways to not only, thank you, to not only have efficiencies, but hopefully, in the end of the day, a better form of justice. But I think what this reflects is, so why are you paying so much attention on that system? Well, because it's 75% of the whole general fund budget. That's why. Here's the crux. Commissioner French mentioned a broken business model. Through no fault of anyone's, we do have a broken business model. We project revenues to grow at about 2.3% over the next few years. Expenditures are projected to grow at 3.4%. If this were a business, which it is, and you had some of your income sources capped, like we do, you're running your own business and they say you can't make any more profit from one year to the next other than 1%. If you could not keep your expenditures at 1% or below, it's obvious what's going to happen. You have a structural gap. You have a broken business model. That's exactly what we're faced with here. So general fund revenue overview. So we'll just more than 58% of all the general fund revenues come from property tax and sales tax. And that's significant. Unlike cities, and I know we all smile when we say this, everyone that lives in a city is a county resident. They're our constituents too. But unlike the cities and our friends at the cities, we have very limited ability to raise revenues. They have a utility tax. It's a large percent of most cities' budgets, or at least the city of Spokane's budget. We don't have that. There's been attempts to get relief from the state to give us a few more tools so we can meet the needs of our constituents, but as of now, we still are pretty well stuck with the sales tax and the property tax. And you can see over here, for instance, the charges for service. It's over here on the right. I apologize again for pointing at the screen where it says 20%. A lot of those are revenues that come in because, for instance, we contract law enforcement with the City of the Valley, which brings in some revenues. But generally, sales tax and property tax, as you can see, make up nearly 60% of the general fund revenue. So, Commissioner French had mentioned a few initiatives that had been passed by the voters and the 1% increase. Actually, and Commissioner French, you probably know more about this than me with your heavy involvement with the transit system. Initiative 695, which actually went into effect in 2000, in a lot of ways actually started, if the business model wasn't broke, this started to crack it up a little bit. People, always think about transit, but there was a lot of money and revenue that was lost to the health districts, to other government services that the counties had to pick up from their general funds. So as you can see then, of course, the big ones are like Initiative 747, which limits the property tax. And this is all a revenue. This is showing you where the property tax revenues between 2000 and 2016. As we were coming out and adjusting to the 1% limit the best we could, things were doing pretty good. If you all remember, housing was going good. The sales tax that was coming in on new construction, which is very valuable to us, but it's one-time money on the new construction. And then everybody knows what happened. The bus came, everything starts to level out. Property tax is obviously more stable than sales tax. To try to meet the needs that for services, the road levy shift went in 2015. Not the money, the taxing capacity from the roads. But then look at the revenue impacts. This is on shrinking sales tax, another very important part of what funds the general fund. Look at this dip. For you folks that are out there, and there's so many of you that were here just like I was, when the valley or the incorporations happened in the Spokane Valley and Liberty Lake, our revenue, sales tax dropped $7 to $8 million just because of the incorporations. Now to counter a little bit of this, at the very early days of the Spokane Valley, the only thing that they took in-house initially was the building and planning functions. We still did the roads, we still did the police services, we did actually most everything else. Then over time, of course, they took over the roads and they contracted out a number of services, but we still provide them with essential services like, the assessors, the auditor, and everything else. So then we start to kind of recover a little bit, kind of getting our sea legs back. Not real good. I mean, look at this. This isn't much different. From 2007 years later, your revenues are just about where they were, and then the North Division annexation. And the reason it's listed as the North Division annexation, everybody remembers Costco. I mean, that was the heavy hitter. But there was businesses all the way down that corridor. So it wasn't just the Costco tax that we lost. It was that whole business district on North Division. So here we take another hit. Okay? And all of our employees, as you recognize, Commissioner French, they're all working hard. They're trying to be efficient. They're trying to keep the levels of service at an acceptable level and doing the best they can with less. So then we kind of start to a little bit of stabilization, and then the West Plains annexation happens. And that, for the folks that are watching at home, was the airport and a large section of the West Plains that was in the unincorporated county that the city of Spokane had annexed. So then things start to change. We're starting to get a little bit better. But here I think is just very significant. Over a period of almost 10 years, actually it's closer to 7 years, it takes to get from here back up to here. And all the time we're still having, increased population, increased service delivery that are being asked for. So the sales tax formula, we don't get a lot of sales tax because the sales tax is divvied up between the state of Washington, the city of Spokane, special purpose districts. But in the unincorporated county, as you can see, if you purchase something for $1,000 and it's in the unincorporated county, we get $10 of sales tax revenue. If it's in the city of Spokane, we get a portion of that, 0.15, which is 1.50. So you can see when we start losing our sales tax base, the difference between these two, and these are through incorporation, mostly through incorporations or annexations, it's significant. That's a huge hit to our revenue for sales tax. So you have slow economic growth. Both the property tax and the sales tax revenue have been slower. They dropped, or they do drop during times of economic growth. When the Great Recession hit, as it says over here, which I know it hurt everyone, we didn't actually recover for nearly 5 years, the revenues. It took us 5 years to get back to where we were when the crash had hit. And if you really notice and you take in, we don't have a very high growth rate in our revenue streams, even in 2016. So, let's look at expenditures. This is where the vast majority of the general fund goes to wages, salaries, and benefits. We are a service industry. We provide services. We have many lines of business here. And to do those services, it's people intensive. And that's where most of the money goes. The maintenance and operation, as you see, are 40%, and then, of course, the capital is 1%. So with most of those wages, or excuse me, most of the money goes to salary and benefits. So the general fund cost impacts. This is the operating expenditures for over a 16-year period. You follow the line, and this is static. Look at the static line here. Get some growth going on. Again, this just represents we got up to here. Things are living pretty large. The recession hits, takes a huge dip. We try to come out of it. We just start to break out of it right about 2014, 15. Things get better, and this little jump that you see in there is when the county had to get some money to buy the transfer stations. So what did you do? I find it somewhat ironic that we're actually, in a lot of ways, to the credit of our employees, we're a victim a little bit of our own success. You know, you go to the state, and I don't mean to make a political statement here, I think it's a business statement, and you go to the state and you keep saying, well, we need some relief, we need some relief. But you know, because of the hard work of our employees and being very creative, we seem to somehow continue to get by. So why, you know, you guys, it doesn't seem what happened, you guys seem to, you know, keep providing your services at a high level. Well, that doesn't just happen. What happens is the county's responded to these loss of revenues, these state mandates, which are most all of them unfunded, and the service requirements by staff reductions during the recession. You can see the general fund full-time equivalents, and you can get into the years where the recession hit. 5 years of no cost of living adjustments for most of the employees. Very, very few places, you know, where your folks sacrifice to keep the ship afloat. Now, some of those, when it says for most employees, I want to be real clear. Some of the employees, or a great deal of the employees in general fund, are interest arb groups, interest arbitration groups. So they have a different system of being compensated because years ago they gave up the right to strike for binding arbitration. But a lot of the folks in the general fund aren't binding arbitration. Medical self-insurance plan, plan redesign, employee contribution increases. One of the largest things in the plan redesign is quite a few years ago, the county and its bargaining unit folks got together and they took a real hard look at what they could do to make it more cost effective. And just as a tidbit, one of the greatest savings that was found in there was generic prescriptions, as a matter of fact, on the medical. At least department reorgs, people, you know, trying to do more with less, do the best they can. And the service level reductions, such as some of our offices or some of our departments had to limit their office hour for services, reduce maintenance. A lot of the neighborhood parks that we used to be able to take care of, we just don't have the resources, and the folks in the parks just have to do the best they can with what they have. So, here's some budget assumptions going into 2018. And I like the fact, and I'm excited, and I know the staff is too, about how transparent this budget is going to be, this budget preparation. It's not going to necessarily be all good news, obviously, and there's going to be a heavy lift, but it's going to be very transparent. The assumption going into 18 was that there wouldn't be any shift of the road levy capacity. And that was about $5 million in property tax revenue. We're going to assume that there's going to be either minimal or no increase in revenue service contracts and the state funding levels. In other words, we don't believe the state's going to come through with any additional help for the counties. We've got some union contract settlements. These things that are being estimated out, the sheriff deputies, the deputy association has settled their contract through arbitration. The attention union did settle prior to them going to arbitration. Other employee costs that we have, you know, health is going up, the health benefits are going in, or the cost of health care is going up. Wages go up in the county sometimes without necessarily getting a raise because people have step increases that they deserve, and so we anticipate that'll be about $2.5 million annually. And some of the, like I was mentioning, some of these other operational costs, workers' comp's going up, the retirement rate increases for the PERS system is going up, the minimum wage is increased, which we have a lot of volunteers, we have a lot of folks that work part-time. That's an impact to the bottom line with the minimum wage increase. And then, of course, there's general inflation for operational costs. So what are the next steps? As Commissioner French mentioned, we're having a public education presentation right now. We're going to do this again the 30th. It says other educational presentations as needed. We have started to get requests from some of our employee groups that aren't on campus that says, would you be willing to come out to where we work and do your presentation? I know Commissioner French is going to plan on doing this presentation at the COG, I believe, and Employee Connections. As he mentioned earlier, the public input, September, October, we're going to have the departments come in. They're going to present what a balanced budget looks like. What does that mean? Some ideas about prioritizing their services that they need. Through October, we're also going to have recommendations that are going to be presented to balance the budget as the deliberations go on about, you know, we've got to listen to the public. We've got to hear what they have to say about what their priorities are and fund those priorities the best we can. Then we're going to have budget reports going to be finalized, and then the board has to approve and adopt a budget by the end of the year. And it's scheduled for December 4th will be the public hearing on the final budget. Are there any questions? Comments?
So there has, we are working with Costco to locate a new facility out on Highway 2. And so what are we projecting that will have for the county in terms of 2018 in terms of potential revenue? Ballpark.
Well, we have, I'd say the ballpark, probably they'll generate between $800,000 and $900,000 a sales tax. Now, keep in mind, it's probably going to be a tad bit more than that, but we already get 0.15% of the sales tax on North Division that's collected. So you have to back that out because you don't really net that. Yeah, we've worked, very proud of all the staff that has worked really hard with not only the Costco folks, but the Kaiser people. I think I want to stress that as part of the education process, it isn't like the employees aren't doing anything. Every day, I mean, they know that, you know, this is a reality, okay, because of our broken business model. But they're not sitting back and woe is me or anything. They are trying as hard as they can to be creative, generate more revenue, keep the service levels that are acceptable to the constituents. That's part of the education. This didn't just happen. That's the main line here. It didn't just happen overnight. This has been creeping up on us for years, and we have some hard choices to make.
So one of the other big impacts that we have experienced here, probably more so here lately than previous years, is the number of unfunded mandates that are coming down from the state that put additional pressure on us to address without necessarily providing the revenue necessary to cover that additional expense. And so one of those specifically is the Hearst versus Whatcom County decision as it relates to the ability of drilling wells on private property. That clearly was the responsibility to manage state waters has always been with the Department of Ecology, but the Supreme Court in their ruling made counties responsible for what otherwise would have been a state responsibility, and the cost to the county has been several $100,000 over just 1 year in terms of time. I know that the county auditor has been impacted by a decision in terms of placing drop boxes in all of the small communities that now is going to result in something in the neighborhood of about $50,000 of additional cost and expense to the auditor. Clearly not something that, auditors across the state felt was needed, but something that the legislature has now imposed without any kind of financial relief and stuff. So it's those kind of things that continue to come down the pike that counties are forced to try and find a way to fund. And you mentioned it in your presentation that part of our challenge is our own success. And this is true for counties across the state. Every time we get hit with one of these unfunded mandates, reduction in shared revenues, a variety of things, counties always have been able to try and find a way to make it work. Well, we've trained the legislature in that, do whatever you want and we'll find a way to make it work. Well, now we've reached a point to where those options and that flexibility has just been eroded as a result of things that we don't have the ability to control. And again, one of the roles of county government is that we are the agent of the state. We do the property tax assessments on behalf of the state, property tax collection on behalf of the state, auditing and records and elections on behalf of the state. The state of Washington is only one of 5 states in the country where the criminal justice system is paid for at the local level instead of a state responsibility. Indigent defense is a responsibility of the state, but when they choose not to fund that, it then becomes a responsibility of counties. And so there's a whole litany of these things where the state has managed to balance their budget on the backs of counties. And we now have counties in the state that don't have 24/7 sheriff coverage on the roads, probably are one prosecution away from declaring bankruptcy. Times are tough for a variety of counties. We're not there, but we can certainly see the rocks on the shore. So that's one of the reasons we're being very proactive in terms of trying to get ahead of this, and also make sure that the public is aware of the challenges, and they can help make decisions that will help guide the direction for the county. We are public servants. We're here to serve the public will, and part of that is knowing what the public wants and what they're willing to pay. And so that was one of the goals for Commissioner Kearns and myself, is to put that proposition before the voters and have them get us direction. That was before the full impact of McCleary was known, and with McCleary it's just a heavy lift, so we'll postpone that decision until next year, and in the meantime, together we'll get through 2018. So, Commissioner Kearns, anything that you want to add?
I again would like to echo just the thanks to the staff and the hard work that we've seen in addressing this budget situation where we're at. Mr. Gemmel, I want to thank you for a wonderful presentation that breaks it down very succinctly. And just to let everybody know, we're not just sitting back. We haven't sat back on any of this. Just this afternoon, we approved a venture that could potentially save us $2 million today through working with our folks in detention services. It's the innovative solutions that we're looking for. We're finding them, and we're going to continue to find them, work with our wonderful staff to pull this together. But the biggest thing that I'm excited about is how we are involving the public in this with public engagement in transportation, or public public engagement and transparency. That's what this is about. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight and being a part of that process. And looking forward to the public comments.
And as we are mining our operation for any kind of savings we can, if you've got an idea, suggestion, please communicate it to your department head, communicate it to Mr. Gimmel, Mr. Dixon, or feel free to contact either one of the Board of County Commissioners. And, you know, quite frankly, everything is on the table. And things that we used to do, well, what we're looking for, and I like this saying, it was from Commissioner Milkey, things we did for no apparent reason. You know, we can't afford to do those anymore. Don't know how many of those that are still around, because I know that we've constantly been working to scrub the budgets. But yeah, everything's on the table. So thank you, Mr. Gimmel, for your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So with this, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. I do not have anybody that's signed up to provide any testimony tonight. We are, again, this is going to be unique for county. We're going to open up the hearing tonight, and I'm going to keep it open through the entire budget process. We'll just continue it from meeting to meeting to meeting. So we're not going to close the hearing. So if you, after listening to this presentation tonight and after thinking about it, think, you know what, I coulda, woulda, shoulda said, whatever that is, show up next week, the week after, and share with us your comments. The hearing will remain open until we actually take an action to pass the budget. So, you can also go to our website and make any suggestions there as well. And if you want to share tonight's video with friends and family, feel free to, again, send it to the website. It'll be on the website. So, yeah. Right, and the presentation that was made tonight is already on the website. So as Mr. Gimmel indicated, I'm going to be doing employee connections. We're going to be doing a spotlight, and there's one other, and the COG, Council of Governments, making a presentation to them. COG, Council of Governments, is, once a year we bring all of the electeds for all of the cities in the county and other major agencies like Spokane Transit, the airport, and others, including Fairchild, and we share information about issues that affect the county. And we're going to be doing that presentation on the opening day for the fair. So with that, then, I'm going to open up the hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to provide any testimony on anything that you heard tonight or anything else that might relate to county budget, county government? Second call for anybody wanting to provide testimony. Third and final call. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight. And we look forward to working with you side by side to get through this over the next couple months so that we can put together a budget that will be sustainable through 2018. So with that completes the items that are on the presentation. It gets us to our final open public forum. I do not have anybody signed up for the open public forum, but I'll ask, is there anybody in the audience who'd like to provide testimony for the open public forum? Second call, anybody want to provide testimony? Third and final call, seeing nobody come forward. Would like to say thank you for joining us tonight. Hang in there with us, and we'll get through this together. So with that, it is now 6:20, and we are adjourned.